Welcome back to Sixth Gear House. Today, I'll show how I turned our boring builder grade kitchen island into this. When we bought this house, everything was honey oak. The cabinets, the island, and the floor. We replaced the floor right away, and now it's time to do something about this island. Here's a quick sketch of what I'm planning on doing. Rather than start from the ground up, I'm just going to add on to what's already there for an updated custom look. Next, I used a pencil and sketched my idea on the island to see how it would look in real life. There's a couple of seams on the blank side of the island that I'm going to hide by covering them up with the vertical trim piece. Here's what I'm thinking for the ends. Just sort of framing it all in all the way around. Except I'm going to move this edge out a ½ inch to allow for this outlet. If I build the long side out first, then I'll have an extra ½ inch to move this vertical piece over. And I won't have to mess with relocating this outlet. Just maybe shave an ½ inch or so off the edge of the cover plate. I never bothered putting the molding back on after the floor was done, so the new trim will cover up that gap. I'm going to paint this a whitewashed light gray for that slightly distressed farmhouse look. And of course, that means painting all of these drawers and doors, which is probably going to be the most tedious part of this renovation project. I've got this old Craftsman dual action sander made in the USA, so you know it's old school. Alright, I've got all the pieces cut. I'm going to have a seam on the baseboard. It's wider and I couldn't get it in the full length. I'm down in the shop now and I need to clean these up a little. Sand the corners and sand these edges too a little bit. Because, let me show you why. I learned when I finished the basement that the edges take paint better when they're not a sharp corner. Just a quick pass with a sanding block to take that sharp edge down. It's good to hit the surface I'll be painting as well. I wrote on the back side where they go on the island, so I know not to bother sanding that side. I'm going to use this little finishing sander for this step. I'm filling in some of these knots and imperfections. That way, it'll be smooth after it's painted. Imperfections are filled and sanded smooth, along with the sides and edges that will face out. And now it's time for paint. I got some gray paint and primer in one, and a foam roller. I've got these up on sawhorses, so I'm not trying to hunch over and paint these on the floor. That's one coat, and you can still see the grain, which is perfect for the whitewash that I'll put on next. Whitewash is just a flat white paint mixed with water. I'd start with the ratio of mostly water and add a little paint until you get the consistency you're looking for. It doesn't take a lot of paint to get this effect, and if it's too heavy, it won't settle into the low areas of the wood grain. I'll show how to mix a batch of whitewash a little later in the video. I let these dry overnight and they turned out perfect. They look like a light gray from a distance, but as you get closer, you can really see the details of the wood start to pop in the darker gray areas. Those are actually the higher raised areas of the wood grain. The whitewash is so thin that it settles down into the recessed areas of the grain. Here's one you can see. Those gray areas are where I lifted up the brush in the middle of a stroke. But yeah, this is the exact old aged look I was going for. Here's a comparison of whitewash methods. This table I also painted gray first with an aerosol gray primer, but then I sanded the whole surface so only the low points were gray and everything else was bare wood. Then I did probably 5 coats of whitewash, and you can see the wood grain is a lot less visible for a more uniform white surface. Now it's time for cabinets and drawers, but first they need a good cleaning. Years of things getting spilled adds up. Just spray them down with some soapy water and wipe down with a washcloth. These need to come off. Then use some Goo Gone to take off any sticky residue left behind. Okay, all cleaned up, ready to sand. Hey Gary, sanding the doors is the most labor-intensive part of refinishing cabinets. You've got all those recessed areas and contours, edges too. I've already done the recessed areas on this one with the sanding block, and I've got a lot more to go. So I read about this on the internet, liquid sandpaper, and I'm skeptical that something so quick and easy can replace physical sanding and make paint bond to a smooth, sealed surface. So I'll test that on the back of the doors and stick to sanding on the fronts. Faces and edges are all the way done. Now for the backs. And this is a good place to experiment with the liquid sandpaper. It's been about 20 minutes and the liquid sandpaper is dry. Time for paint. I let these dry overnight. Let's see if liquid sandpaper lives up to its name. That scratched off way too easy. Luckily it's on the back where it shouldn't see that much wear and tear, and it won't be noticed. So you can't go wrong with good old-fashioned sandpaper. Time to get the fronts painted with some paint and primer. Pardon the hammering. I got my helper down here today. Just gave them a good wipe down with a damp rag to remove any dust. There's one other thing I gotta do while these dry. Looking at this corner of the island here, I'm gonna have a board going over here. But this isn't flush. It sticks out maybe 3/16 of an inch. So I need to pull this off and shave it down. It's held together with dowel pins. Pull this piece of trim off, and that should help allow this whole side to slide out. Now we're getting somewhere. It was glued and stapled in there pretty well. I need to get the other end of the island too. Pulled out all the staples from the end pieces, and now I'm going to rip them down on the table saw. We found out the liquid sandpaper didn't work over a smooth surface after I scratched it right off with my fingernail. But I did another test off camera, applying it over an already sanded surface, and that seemed to make the painted surface more durable than if I just painted over a sanded surface. So I went ahead and applied the liquid sandpaper over all the sanded surfaces on the faces of the cabinet doors and drawers for some extra protection, since the kitchen is a high traffic area and I have kids. Next, I painted all the recessed areas and hard to reach areas first with a brush. Okay, I got the hard part all done. This was everything that I can't get into with the foam roller. I'll let this dry and then roll the flat surfaces next. And while those were drying, I came upstairs and used the brush to paint all of the hard to reach areas on the island that I'm not able to get into with the roller. Oh, there's my nice flush corner that I put back together. But yeah, I painted all the inset edges because it would look weird to see wood on those when I open the doors. And right under the countertop because I don't want to get paint on that if I try it with the roller. Next, I rolled the cabinet doors and drawer faces. And then the rest of the island. Then a second coat on the cabinet doors and drawer faces. And another on the island. Next, it was time for the whitewash. To make the whitewash, I'm just using some flat white paint. Just latex interior paint. And pour a little bit into a mixing cup. Not a lot. I want it to be thin, not heavy. It really doesn't take much paint. I'll try this first. I can always add more water. That gives you an idea of how thin it is. I might call that 2% milk consistency. And after painting one door, I could tell it wasn't thin enough because it was too white. Okay, I'm going to stop and compare. This is what I had before. The whitewash was thin enough to where it settled down in the low areas of the grain, which really brought out the detail of the wood. There's no brush strokes here. Now this is all brush strokes. The whitewash isn't quite thin enough to self-level in the low areas of the grain. I'm going to redo this door. The nice thing about latex paint is it wipes right off when it's wet. I added a little more water to the whitewash and tried again. Now that's what I was going for. I can see a lot more of the gray through the white, and it looks like more of a natural wood grain. And then I did the same to the island. Okay, these are all dry now. I've got a trim piece to compare. It's hard to tell when they're wet and glossy, but when they're both dry, you can see that the texture is the same. Really happy with how these turned out. Let's go see how they look on the island. And done with this side. Well, almost. I need to adjust the hinges to get the doors aligned. Here too. But I'm happy with this. Now I need to stick some more of these bumpers on so they don't slam shut. I've got all the trim pieces laid out around the island. Watch how fast I can nail these on with a finishing nail gun. So on the ends here, I just remembered that I have this part on the bottom that I need to notch out to get it to fit right. There you can see what I'm working with. I forgot to do this before I painted. I can't just leave it like this because it looks really bad from the front. So let's go trim this little piece out. These trim boards are all 1x4 inches except for the base, which is a 1x5. A little taller just looks better at the bottom. But I've got a seam because I can only get these in 8-foot length. So I'm going to fill this in with some caulk and try and hide it with paint. I'm about to touch up the caulk area on the baseboard, and I forgot I needed to paint the ends of these two pieces. They go on the top on the ends of the island. I mixed up a little bit more whitewash. And let's have a look at the finished result. What do you think about the hardware? I reused the knobs that I had. Not sure if I like them or not yet. Here's how the seam turned out. Not perfect, but decent enough for me. Here's a close look at the wood grain showing through the whitewash. Thanks for watching, and consider subscribing for more how-to videos and DIY home hacks here at 6th Gear House.